1 million children, or really all the children inside the territory, are now food insecure, facing what could soon become a catastrophic nutrition crisis. We project that over the next few months, child wasting, the most life-threatening form of malnutrition in children, could increase by nearly 30% in Gaza. Meanwhile, water production capacity has plummeted to just 5% of its normal output, with families and children relying on 3 liters or less of water per person per day for drinking, cooking, and hygiene. At the same time, water pumping, desalination, and wastewater treatment have all ceased to function because of the lack of fuel, and sanitation services have collapsed. These conditions are leading to disease outbreaks which could be life-threatening for vulnerable groups like newborns, children, and women, especially those who are malnourished. We are seeing cases of diarrheal and respiratory infections in children under 5. We anticipate that the situation could worsen as the colder weather starts to set in. The public health risks in Gaza are compounded by the virtual shutdown of the healthcare system. More than 2/3 of hospitals are no longer functioning because of the lack of fuel and water, or because they sustained catastrophic damage in attacks. Moreover, WHO estimates that at least 16 health workers have been killed and 38 injured while on duty. Hospital patients are being injured and killed or are dying from the lack of medicine and care. Last week, UNICEF was part of an interagency mission that relocated 31 babies from Al-Shifa Hospital to the Emirati Hospital in the south of the Gaza Strip. 28 of those babies are now receiving care in Egypt. Hospitals should never be attacked or used by combatants. And with thousands of displaced people sheltering in Gaza's health facilities, I cannot emphasize this point enough. We are also seeing devastating attacks on schools, with close to 90% of all school buildings sustaining damage. Nearly 80% of the remaining school facilities are being used as shelters for internally displaced people. But even these spaces where children and families have sought safety after fleeing their homes have come under attack. This past weekend, strikes on 2 schools, including UNRWA's Al-Fukr school, which was sheltering displaced people, reportedly killed at least 24 people. UNICEF condemns all attacks on schools. Across the state of Palestine and Israel, parties to the conflict are blatantly committing grave violations against children, including killing, maiming, abductions, attacks on schools and hospitals, and the denial of humanitarian access. But in Gaza, the effects of the violence perpetrated on children have been catastrophic, indiscriminate, and disproportionate. And when the war ends, the contamination by explosive remnants of war will be unprecedented, with potentially tens of thousands of remnants scattered across Gaza and beyond, a lethal threat to children that could last for decades. Inside Gaza, the war has also caused the largest ever loss of life for UN personnel, with more than 100 UNRWA staff killed. And in recent days, a WHO colleague was killed along with her 6-month-old baby, her husband, and her 2 brothers. Excellencies, for children to survive, for humanitarian workers to stay and effectively deliver, humanitarian pauses are simply not enough. UNICEF is calling for an urgent humanitarian ceasefire to immediately put a stop to this carnage. We are concerned that further military escalation in the south of Gaza would exponentially worsen the humanitarian situation there, causing additional displacement and squeezing the civilian population into an even smaller area. Attacks on the south must be avoided. UNICEF is strongly opposed to the establishment of so-called safe zones. No place is safe in the Gaza Strip, and the proposed zones do not have the infrastructure